Longtime writer for the Associated Press, Allan Kreda, will be accompanying me on today's episode of Locked On Devils. He covers not only the Devils, but also the Rangers and Islanders. So we're going to talk about everything in the Metropolitan Division and the playoff chances for the Devils as the Metro tightens up as the season progresses. And we're also going to talk about how the Devils got to this point of the year with it being halfway done. Lots to talk about in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Elliott scores! Oh, Steven stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credentialed media member, Trey Matthews. I'm joined alongside by Allan Kreda. Allan's been covering the New Jersey Devils, the New York Rangers, and the New York Islanders for 25 years, and he currently works for the Associated Press. So, Allan, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Well, thank you for taking the time out your busy day. Like I said, it's not just the Devils you cover the Rangers and Islanders. So we could definitely just talk about like you said before the recording, just the potential rivalry that we could have come playoff time, because the Devils are right now at an all-time high, second in the Metro. Looks like they have the playoffs set in their sights halfway through the year. But I want to go back to the beginning. So, having been around this team for a good while, what were your realistic expectations going into the year? Because I said ceiling wild card, but they've exceeded that, going on a 13-game win streak, having a great month of November. Despite struggling in December, they were able to tread the water a little bit and maintain second in the Metro. So I just want to get your thoughts of where did you see this team potentially going first game of the year?
I thought they would improve for sure, because we knew the goaltending would be more stable. They made the trade for Vitek Vanacek. That was key. Right off the bat, they had something to build on. Goaltending was a tough spot last season. Using 7 different netminders wasn't easy. Wouldn't be easy for any team in any situation. For the young Devils, that was hard. So that was an immediate improvement. The trade for John Marino, I think, definitely solidified the confidence. Another veteran presence, Dougie Hamilton back and healthy. So the defense has been stable and good and fast. And Ryan Graves' game is accelerated. Jonas Siegenthaler showing improvement. All together, they just have weapons on defense. And that helps the goalies. That helps the offense be more confident. I think just solidifying the 6, and then the growth of the young stars. Jack Hughes doing what he does at this level now, elite status, no question. Jesper Bratt, tremendous acceleration to his game. It's Nico Hischier captaining, leading, scoring goals. The team wins almost every time either of those guys scores or even has a point. So it's a confidence boost on top of a confidence boost. And I think what's happened was the momentum developed. They started winning and winning and winning some more. Teams suddenly were looking at them a whole different way. Their opponents saw, these aren't the same old Devils. They show speed and maturity. They rally back after losses that may have put them away a couple of seasons ago. Now they win those next games. They win on the road. This is something they weren't doing at the rate they're doing anything close to this season. So it's a combination of factors, and it's got to be pure confidence. It's as simple as that. Winning brings winning. The coach, Lindy Rupp, I'm sure instills confidence in these guys. He's seen it all in his long coaching career. He knows what buttons to push, when to push them. Confidence in the veterans, confidence in the young guys. He's a veteran coach. He's the right person to be behind the bench with this type of team. So all those factors together, and beating Carolina, beating the Rangers a couple of times two out of three, coming back in games, also something they weren't doing with regularity. Now teams know the push is coming. A 2-goal deficit is not much to them. And with Jack Hughes playing the way he's playing, the goals come in flurries. So the power play is good. The special teams are good. The goaltending has been great. All of that adds up to where they are right now in playoff position at the moment, a handful of points out of first. Of course, the race is going to be tight. It won't be easy. It'll be harder and harder to keep it going. But surely that winning streak at the beginning of the season gave them a cushion that very few expected them to have. No one expected the Devils in first place for the majority of the first half. No one. And that's a good thing. Surprises are nice when a fan base is suddenly brought on board. The building is loud, exciting. The games against the Islanders and Rangers are like old times. Rivalry fans chanting for both teams. This is what hockey needs in the tri-state area. It's fun for both teams, all three teams. And I know, just talking to fans, everyone's dreaming of some sort of local rivalry playoff series already 3 months from now.
Right. And we're halfway done with the year. And the one thing that I said for the New Jersey Devils when they were first in the Metro back in November, I said, we got to see how they do at the midway point. Because if you recall, during Taylor Hall's Hart Memorial Trophy campaign, the Devils were sitting at first come December. But then what happened as the season progressed, they get into the wild card and they're dealt in 5 games by the Tampa Bay Lightning. So I said, let's wait until the midway point before I actually make a full assessment as to whether or not this team is legitimate or not. But I had like my high confidence in them just because you don't win 13 games in a row by accident. I think that's what I think that's what fans need to realize, because when the Devils were struggling in the month of December, people were saying like that win streak was a fluke or it wasn't real, whatever the case might be. I'm like, you can't fake that. That's the 5th longest win streak in NHL history. And had that game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, had that gone differently, the Devils, if they still win those 3 games after that trash night at the Prudential Center, as I like to call it, they're tied with the Pittsburgh Penguins for longest win streak of all time in the NHL. So stuff like that doesn't just happen. And every team hits a wall. The Devils hit their wall in December. I'd rather they hit it now versus like in February when the games start to become more crucial and start to add on up. But having met you in the press box post game and having gotten your insight in that sort of regard, we're halfway done with the year. And we've seen them at their best this season. We've seen them at their worst, because at one point, I think they went on a 6-game losing streak or 6-game winless streak during the month of December. Where do you see this team going from here? Like, do you see them making a big trade? Do you see them just trying to stick to what they got? Because having spoken to Ryan Novozinski of NJ.com, I think now is the time for Tom Fitzgerald to actually sit down and fully assess everything, because Ryan told me that that Tom Fitzgerald is going to wait until around like the 40 game or halfway mark to see like, hey, do we need to make a trade? Do we are we just waiting for Andre Palat to come back into full fruition because he was out for quite some time? Maybe that's our big piece that we needed. Nathan Bash and John Marino are set to return hopefully during the course of this road trip. What changes would you like to see the Devils make, or do you think they're good with what they got for right now?
I think they're pretty good with what they have. The big trades are a major risk at times. Sometimes chemistry can be affected. I mean, there were certain teams that always seem to go for the splashy trade if there's cap space created or uncreated. The Rangers are always in the rumor mill of the big trade. That's been for decades. The Devils, I don't know if they would want to make the trade for the big rental player this year. The lines have been pretty steady. When everyone's healthy, the pieces are obviously there. It probably will really come down to the goaltending and the defense down the stretch in the playoffs. It's a different type of game. It's a tighter game. I think if anything, we might see them play more like all teams do to make sure they get the 1 point. There isn't as much risk taking. I mean, they have the bank of points now, so they really just have to stick around 500, NHL 500 the rest of the way to get around 100 points, which would get them in. So the big trade, there are always surprises on the deadline day. That's become a cottage industry unto itself now. Every year, it's even more so. Everybody's trying to figure out who has room for what, who's really going to get traded on that day. There's always a surprise that no one sees coming. I mean, Chicago clearly will trade some of those star players that are on contracts that are expiring. Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews probably go separate ways, but who knows? Who knows where and at what price? Draft picks are being mentioned, dangling the first round picks have become so valuable. I don't see the Devils going for something, going for broke, so to speak, on a trade. Maybe a piece, but adding Andre Palat, a healthy Andre Palat for the second half is like making a great trade. He's a two-time Stanley Cup winner. He knows what it takes to win. Devil fans have hardly seen him yet, so he brings a lot to the table, much like Max Pacioretty brings to Carolina. No need to go out and make a big splashy trade. when you have a player of that pedigree coming right back. So some of it is hype. Some of it is we need something magically special more than we have. But clearly the Devils' record wouldn't be where it is without the players they have. So why change it in a dramatic way? Maybe they'll tinker. Maybe they'll pick up a veteran piece, an extra defenseman, another veteran. You always need those big defensemen who've been there in the playoffs. You need reserve players if someone gets hurt. So maybe that kind of insurance move more than a Patrick Kane or Jonathan Toews or some of the other giant contracts that are floating. I mean, so to go for the rental gives you other problems. Then you have to figure out, do you keep that player? Is it worth it? If you don't win more than a round, did you sacrifice too much? Do you really want to give up high round picks in what this year will be a deep draft, especially? So less is more, I think, often. And unless there's a certain player, a certain hole to fill, why risk it? And I think the Devils have been prudent and smart with the moves they've made before this season. Again, John Marino was a trade that just massive dividends from a kind of simple defenseman swap. And the goaltender's been excellent from day one. Vanacek's, to me, a clear number one. He never really had that chance in Washington. Now he's proven he can be that. I don't see why that wouldn't continue in the playoffs. And in some ways, when the Devils get to the playoffs, they're playing with house money. It's a new experience for a lot of these guys. They'll learn. It won't be easy, but teams develop and win later because of things they go through earlier. And this whatever playoff experience is ahead for Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier and Jesper Bratt can only help them in the years to come.
Don't worry, there's still more in store with Allan Kreda. But before we continue, I wanted to get you guys hip to Built Bar, because Built Bar is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. So looking for a delicious treat, but don't want all the fat and calories, then you got to try a Built Bar. And we got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a lot healthier, and I'm sure that's your goal too, because that's a lot of people's New Year's resolutions. And if you want to stick to it, then you got to try Built Bar once again. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they are covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built Bar does it, but somehow, some way, they're only 130 calories and only 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head over to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter, and churro. You can thank me later. Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. They're also the official protein bar of NASCAR. And now I want you guys to make some extra cash, so head over to betonline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and World Cup. They've got it all at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. They're always the fastest, easy way to get all your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Please remember to gamble responsibly and visit our friends at Locked On Bets for all your betting needs there as well. Okay, let's get back to our discussion with Allan Kreda of the Associated Press. Take it away once again. Yeah, I mean, you talked about the goaltending, and obviously we saw how good Vitek Vanecek has been this year. My thing for Vitek Vanecek is that he's always, in his short career in the NHL, he's always been good, like while playing for the Washington Capitals. But the problem was, come playoff time, he completely crashed and burned. And I always say you seal your legacy come playoff time, because if you have a bad playoff performance, it doesn't really matter what you did in the regular season, or people are going to remember your playoff performance versus what you did in the regular season. And that's sometimes unfair, because Vitek Vanecek is a good goalie. Now, can he rebound come playoff time? That's we're going to have to wait and see. But going back to what you said about certain trades, I remember on my show, I talked about potentially maybe the Devils trading away some assets for Patrick Kane, because Patrick Kane is probably the greatest American player to ever play the game. Yes, he's on the other side of his better days, but maybe he could contribute. But my fan base, my listenership said absolutely no, not another small forward. try to go for someone like Timo Meyer, someone who can basically play around the net, someone who plays a similar role as Nathan Bastian, but way better kind of thing. So I think that's what people are aiming for, like maybe a Timo Meyer, someone who can sign long-term and someone who is still relatively young. He's in his mid-20s. So he's not the oldest person, but he's not the youngest person either. So there's that. So in terms of trades, you're right. I mean, having spoken to Andre Palat after a certain game, I asked him, like, would he be willing to, like, maybe, like, where does he see himself best fit? Because obviously he's missed a lot. He said he'll go wherever coach wants him to go. So I say Andre Palat for the time being, temporarily, bottom 6 player, just to get eased back into it. Just so he could get, just so he could get his mojo back, because he's missed significant amount of time. And Lindy Ruff also said post-game, your second or third game back is always tougher than your first. So I say for Andre Palat for the time being, especially with Nathan Bastian still being out, put him on the bottom 6 to just add some more depth. And we obviously saw what Dawson Mercer was able to do against the Carolina Hurricanes. So I say move Dawson Mercer up to the top 6 with Jack Hughes and Eric Holla. I love Eric and all, and he has done great things on the same line as Jack Hughes, but our bottom 6 needs a little bit more help. That's my thing. So I think the puck possessions, the face-offs, the grit and determination on the defensive side of things. Yes, you're able to hide Jack Hughes in that sort of aspect, because while he's not a bad defender, defense is not Jack Hughes' strength. That's not what we need him for. So it's just like you can hide him in that regards. But I say move either Eric Holla or Andre Palat to the bottom 6. And I thought that's what they were going to do against the Carolina Hurricanes, but didn't work in that sort of aspect. But scoring has never been the problem for the Devils. Obviously, you said goaltending is definitely something that's going to be an X factor going into the playoffs, and it was an X factor going into the season. So I got to ask you about Mackenzie Blackwood, because he's set to become a restricted free agent at the end of this year. I personally don't feel comfortable re-signing him to a long-term deal, once again, just because he's prone to injury. He performs either at expectations or below them. He never exceeds them. Whereas someone like Akira Schmid, he's exceeded expectations. Nico Dawes is going to the AHL All-Star game representing the Comets and the Devils. So you got to worry about that. And Vitek Vanacek has exceeded expectations. Do you think players like Mackenzie Blackwood and Damon Severson, do you think their times as Devils players is coming quickly to an end?
Probably. I mean, that's the tricky part. Again, veterans and what to do, how much to devote. Goalies, I mean, I always like seeing a young goalie rise through the system, become a star, build for the future that way, not take a lot of risk. Goaltending is such a finicky position, and I think they have their number one in Vitek Vanacek. There's something about the way he's embraced the fan base, the reaction. He seems calm and cool and collected. He's steady. I think he will have a good playoffs. It'll be a different team in front of him that he had in Washington. There was always immense pressure on that team every year to do something they did once in 2018. They've had so many Capitals have had so many playoff flameouts. If you take away 2018, the goaltender always got the brunt of the blame, whether it was Braden Holtby. I mean, he's been. It was a tough spot there. I think it was a hard team to win with in the playoffs at times. So I think he's relaxed and played really well. And I like the idea of the young goalies backing him up when they're ready. Kira Schmid's been solid. We saw a little bit of Nico Dawes last year. I know they want to give him more time in Utica. So I think they're on the right track. I'd rather see them spend the large contract money on more defense. If Damon Severson isn't kept as a veteran, spend it on a younger defenseman, a free agent there. Spend it on young forwards. They know they're going to, of course, have to re-sign all the young talent sooner than later to big contracts. So wherever you can make sure to have extra resources in this salary cap world, which is still a challenge because it hasn't really ballooned much from where it is because of several reasons that will be fixed, but not right now, in a few years. Less is more again. I don't see the point of giving Mackenzie Blackwood a big long-term contract at this point when they have young talent that's shown they're somewhat to more than somewhat ready for NHL prime time.
Right. And you talked about young defensemen. Do you want to see the Devils like go after a veteran piece? If so, who? I know you alluded that you would like to, but I just want you to bear with me for a second. Think about someone like Luke Hughes or Shimon Nemets, who might be NHL ready. Obviously, you still got Riley Walsh in the pipeline, Kevin Ball, Nikita Holtuk. Maybe not a favorite amongst the fans, but Mason Gearston, he could definitely ruffle some feathers at the NHL level. So I had my buddy, a fellow Devils podcaster, he goes by the name of Jersey Joe, and we talked about Kuzmenko possibly being traded to the Devils. I would love to have Kuzmenko on the roster, but at the same time, I just factor in like there's a lot of young talent in that pipeline for the Devils, and it's like we have too many good prospects, and it's a good problem. It's a good problem to have, but the problem is like who's going to be given a realistic chance to succeed at the NHL level. So I'm just thinking like when Luke Hughes is done at the University of Michigan, when Shimon Nemets is ready and come like next season or something like that, like is it worth trying to get another piece at the defensive position, especially since they have a lot of young talent in the pipeline?
Probably one piece like a Justin Braun, that type of veteran, sizable defenseman. The Rangers did that last season. Somebody who's seen it all, has size. The Rangers are doing it right now. Ben Harpur, like again, a veteran, big, experienced, plays a calm defensive game. I think it's a lot to ask young defensemen to step in late in the season and then have impact in the playoffs. Not everyone can be Cale Makar. That was a unique situation. He just took the ball and ran, but it's asking a lot. I think we might see Luke Hughes later in the season for some games, but to ask him to play a top 6 role in the playoffs, it's a lot. Less might be more again, but the experience of playing with the team down the stretch will surely help. And you need 7-8 defensemen ready in the playoffs. 1 or 2 injuries, and you have a decimated blue line. That's part of why I like to see Damon Severson stick around. He's the longest tenured Devil. He would love to win with them again. He can only help, and that you're going to need those players. The playoffs are such a different game. If they play the Rangers or the Capitals in the first round, it'll be an instant war of speed. And to me, the first round is the hardest round to win because everyone is relatively healthy. Everyone is thrilled they got there, and they sort of go for broke to be there. Losing in the first round is almost worse than not making the playoffs at all to a lot of teams. So there's something to be said for surviving that first round. And you see all these crazy 6-7 game series, and everyone is just going for the 8 series at once. The fans can't get enough of watching them all. And to me, it's the most exciting part of the playoffs because it's a free for all. And again, everyone's relatively healthy. And a lot of the teams that are just got in have been playing playoff hockey for months already. Really, the playoffs start now. The race is on now. Everyone's watching the standings each day today. And it's 3 months away from the end of the regular season. So it starts earlier and earlier, but veteran defense, a veteran piece there. I always favor the rental. It's kind of an understood part of NHL today is renting a playoff defenseman. Every winning team seems to go out and do that. So a bargain veteran might be the trade that just helps ensure the defense is steady and solid in front of the goaltenders and give the young guys a chance. All those names you mentioned have solid futures here, I'm sure, and have shown it in the short time they've been out there. So, but to put the pressure on them might be tricky in the playoffs.
It would be tricky, and it's funny how you have somewhat high praise for Damon Severson, because a lot of people, including myself, want Damon Severson quite honestly gone. He makes a lot of boneheaded mistakes, and he's meant to be an offensive defenseman, but he hasn't been producing that. Yes, he did have the game winner against the New York Rangers, but prior to that, Damon Severson had 1 or 2 goals before that game winner, and he also had that boneheaded move against the Philadelphia Flyers, in which he was trying to pass it, and the Flyers were able to pinpoint the puck perfectly, and thus they were able to get the game-winning goal. Now, do the Devils win the game even without that blunder from Damon Severson? That's a little iffy because Carter Hart, I remember, was just on one that night. But Lindy Ruff was not too pleased with Damon Severson post-game. He told the reporters that that's not even in our playbook. And as a result, next game, he's a healthy scratch. And when I asked Damon Severson in the locker room, what happened? He was just like, I just tried to make a pass. It was just that simple. But seems like Damon Severson, he's a great veteran piece in the locker room. I love talking with him, but it just seems like his time with the Devils is just coming to an end, especially with his contract situation in which you're going to have to pay him a decent amount of money. I just think that money could be used. It could be well spent somewhere else.
Sure, and teams never want to lose a player of any status for nothing. So to let him finish out the contract and just leave is another risk. And when you can pick up some picks or again another veteran piece, it becomes emotional. Though he is the longest tenured player, so it's not always easy to say goodbye. And but that could come down to the one financial decision they do make and say, well, we're just not going to re-sign you, and that's it. But stranger things have happened where a player just sticks around and has an impact and raises their game in the playoffs when the stakes are higher. I feel like he's been through a lot of down years, and it would mean a lot to him to be part of an up one, which he's already involved in. So the playoffs will be fun. I think the fans, the younger generation of fans, will experience something they haven't seen in a while. I've seen it in the building again when the Islanders, Rangers have been there, how intense it is, how loud it is. It feels like the playoffs 10 years ago when they played the Rangers. Feels like the old Meadowlands Arena when they won the Stanley Cup for here and there. It's a very unique energy when the Devils are winning. It's as loud as it gets, and fans, the playoff energy again is unique and hard to describe for fans who haven't been in the building for it. It's got its own brand of an experience, and this team is different, I think, than 2018. Also, that was a hardworking team. They had Taylor Hall, they had Brian Boyle, they had some good pieces, but they were completely overmatched by Tampa Bay in that first series. They were never in it at all. They won the one home game, but this is different. Like, this team can get on a roll and go somewhere with that young talent. They are scaring opponents. When team after team comes in there and talks about the speed and wow, they're good. They surprised us. They have 4 lines rolling and they come in waves. That means that teams have to develop a defensive tactic against them that maybe they didn't have to do before. And that's unique for the Devils. Again, it wasn't happening for most of the past decade. So they're in rarefied air in terms of how they're regarded in the league, and they're going to have to accept that, though, because now opponents are have to raise their games against them, so that makes it harder too. But they've been resilient. They've won when they haven't been expected to. They're in a playoff spot right now with home ice. That's a pretty good place to be on January 12th.
And right now, the Carolina Hurricanes are on a 4-game winless streak, so it's just like,
right,
win 2 more, then they can pick up right where they left off come mid-December. So my final question for you is that since you cover the New York Rangers and also the New York Islanders, so you're very in the loop what happens in the Metro, how do you see this whole thing playing out at the end of the season, and where do you think everything is going to go come playoff time? Because the Islanders are fighting for their lives. The Rangers were just a game away from passing the Devils for second in the Metro, excuse me. But then Jack Hughes and Damon Severson happened.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see all these teams just like sliding in come the end of the season and then come playoff time?
I think it'll be a race to the finish. I've been feeling like all the way through we will see 3 teams from the Atlantic make it. And those 3 teams are set already. Boston will almost assuredly win the division, and Toronto and Tampa are just sort of getting ready for their series for 3 months. So it's weird math. 5 teams will get in, I think, in the Metropolitan, and is basically a 6-team race, unless somehow the Sabres really raise their game and enter that fray. So somewhere between Rangers, Washington, Islanders, Pittsburgh, Devils, one of those 5 won't make it, is the math. Carolina, be shocked if they fall out of it. Pittsburgh and Washington are sort of always there. The Rangers will continue to raise their game, and they're the ones that will make the big splash trade. They always do. Whatever it will be dramatic, because after what they did last playoffs, the fan base, there's pressure to exceed that, and exceeding that means getting to the finals. So they really have to, quote, go for it, I think. And that's where Patrick Kane makes some logical sense with his relationship with Artemi Panarin. That's what fans have been talking about for a year. Will he be the rental? So the Rangers not making it would also be shocking. The Islanders have probably the most work to do. They've played the most games now,
And they're one of the oldest teams in the NHL.
and right, the clock is definitely ticking there, and it will take them extra work. Pittsburgh Islanders Caps, I think will not go away because Ovechkin is playing at his level. The team has done well with new goaltenders. There's some new energy there. They get Backstrom back. He's got half a season, so he doesn't have the grind of the full 82. They will be tough opponents for anybody down the stretch. And Pittsburgh's got Malkin and Crosby. They're not going away. So I think it comes down to that last week. It's going to be a battle, but I fully expect 5 Metro teams, 3 Atlantic teams, and then the whole wild card mix will determine whether we get a Metro area series. I mean, it could be Islanders Devils somehow. It could be Rangers Devils straight away in the first round. Last time the Rangers and Devils was 2012, an epic series. Devils win in 6. Last time it was Islanders Devils, 1988, way back. 6-game series. The Devils won the first time they won a series 35 years ago, and Islanders Rangers not since 94. So for the young generation, any one of these would be awesome stuff because it'll bring people together. It's a talking point with social media being so much different than it was even a decade ago. It'll be a dramatically new world. So I think that'll be fun for everybody, and I hope it happens for the sake of the fan bases of all 3 teams, that all 3 get in. That's only happened one previous time, and that was 2007. The Islanders and Devils went out in the first round. The Rangers won a round for the first time in a decade and lost to Buffalo. So it would be neat. It would be neat, and it's overdue. And why not this year?
And the Devils have a 90% plus chance of making the playoffs. So once again, it will take a complete collapse, like one of the biggest collapses in all of sports, for them to miss out on the playoffs. And I don't want to become the team that was infamous for winning 13 games in a row, being second at the midway point, and then missing the playoffs. Hoping that won't happen, and I don't think it will. I think the Devils are in a good spot, and I'm just happy with the overall competition, and it's going to be a sprint dash to the finish, like Lindy Ruff said. It really is. So
It is.
all hands on deck, and just see where it goes from here. So, Allan, before I let you go, where can my fans find you?
I'm on Twitter at AKREDA. So that's where I post some of my thoughts and ideas along the way as I cover the teams. My writing is out there for the Associated Press. I cover the games of all 3 teams. So you can always essentially Google my name and Associated Press, and you'll see, or those 2 opponents, like if the Devils Wild, you'll see my game story out there in Google newspaper land. So it's a daily challenge to be circulating amongst all 3. It's fun, and I get to see the opponents many times too. So I feel like I'm studying the league while every team comes my way. Here I have a unique role, and it's enjoyable to be following all 3 teams simultaneously in a season like this, especially.
Well, you get to see it from a perspective that not many other people can see it from. Allan, thank you for taking time. I know you got to cover the Rangers and Stars game later tonight, and once again, I appreciate and hope to have you back on the show at some point.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate the time. Good work.